it would stay right outside of the light. And a blue tick hound would go behind my house down in a ravine and bark like she had treed something most every night for about 3 months. Okay, this happened. I heard something scream one night. I was sitting up in here around 2 o'clock in the morning. I heard something scream like I've never heard in my life, and it rattled my body, and I was 50 yards away from it. I was inside my house. And it scared my neighbors who live about 500 yards behind me. It scared them so bad that they jumped in their car and left. And I come outside after I heard it scream, and I saw them coming down the road in their vehicle, and they didn't come back till the next day. I've never talked to them about it or anything.
All right, Bigfoot Society, I've got the privilege of talking to a gentleman that reached out to me after the last episode was posted up on the Bigfoot Society YouTube channel, and he was commenting even before the video had premiered. And this was the episode where I talked to John Burton about North Carolina, Alabama, and this gentleman's name is Mark Paul from Clay County, Tennessee. How's it going tonight, Mark?
It's going fine, Jeremiah. Thank you for asking. It's a very mild night. We had a storm roll through early on. It's cooled down the temperatures, and it's very mild tonight.
Awesome. You are down there in kind of the middle central area of Tennessee. Is that correct?
Yes, I am in northeastern Tennessee, and I border 4 counties. There's 4 counties within about 10 minutes of me.
All right.
And I kind of live in a triangle area. And these happenings went on for years, and we didn't know what it was. We just wrote it off as something else. We just ignored it. I moved here, me and my wife. We bought this place here in 1996, and we were just so naive. We didn't know anything about Bigfoot, and I haven't known anything about Bigfoot till this winter. I've never done any studying on it or never pursued it, I'm a type guy, I always try to say it's something else. It's doing these things. I always tried to write it off until it became so obvious. These creatures, they want me to know they're here. And me and my wife, we bought this place, and like I said, in 96. And after that, things started to slap the side of our house. And we thought for years it was birds flying into the side of the house. And they occurred quite often, and we ignored it. Like I said, this went on for years because we never had a dog or a cat. Then in 2008, I went outside in the backyard. I had 4-wheelers. I deer hunted. We raised goats, and I've always worked. And I was in the Army for quite a few years in the National Guard. And I was out in the backyard all the time doing something. I've always been a high-strung personality. And I heard tree knocks. And this was around 2008. And I just wrote it off as somebody down in the woods knocking on wood. I just wrote it off as somebody doing it. Never thought no more about it. This went on for a while. I hunted till I was 55, and I've quit hunting now. I just lost interest in it. And all my life, I've been in the woods. I've never saw one. Of course, I've never looked for them. Like I said, Jeremiah, I'm pretty naive to these things. I've heard stories years ago. There were some sightings in Tennessee in 1974 when I was a teenager. I never saw anything unusual in the woods, and I've never been afraid of the dark. My male retired disabled neighbor had a dog, and it was all the time dragging deer bones into his backyard. He passed on in 2019. Then I started working and staying out of town in 2017. In the fall of 2022, December, this past fall, things started to get crazy. First, my dog would go out to the end of the driveway, back and forth, rear up on her hind legs, trying to fight something. And every morning, it's just like clockwork around 1 o'clock. And I'd watch it outside of my living room window. And this thing, it wouldn't show itself. It would stay right outside of the light. And a blue tick hound would go behind my house down in a ravine and bark like she had treated something most every night for about 3 months. Okay, this happened. I heard something scream one night. I was sitting up in here around 2 o'clock in the morning. I heard something scream like I've never heard in my life, and it rattled my body, and I was 50 yards away from it. I was inside my house. And it scared my neighbors who live about 500 yards behind me. It scared them so bad that they jumped in their car and left. And I came outside after I heard it scream, and I saw them coming down the road in their vehicle, and they didn't come back till the next day. I've never talked to them about it or anything. I've always been quiet about this. I don't tell my business, and most certainly not this, because people's not going to believe you. So me and my girlfriend, we just keep it to ourselves. Now, I was outside on my front porch after it screamed. I presume for years they have been looking into my windows. All them times I didn't have a dog when I didn't know. And they are getting bolder, and they want me to know they're here. They love sneaking around after midnight to see what's going on. 3 weeks ago, one brought the back leg of a cow and placed it on the edge of my backyard. After being off work, I've had time, and I think they done that for a gift of some sort or another, because after I've been doing a little studying since this winter, I've heard that they do things like that. After being off work, I've had time to study and figure out what is actually going on around here, because I worked out of town. I wasn't home just on the weekends. Now I'm semi-retired, and I've got time to put all the pieces of the puzzle together. I noticed 2 days where one had crossed my fence in 3 different places, or something had crossed it. It didn't leave any hair, but my fence was messed up in 3 different places. They've been watching me for years, and apparently they like me. Me and my girlfriend were talking the other day around noon, and a rock hit the backside of my house. My neighbor shot at one back in mid-January. She had been putting dog feed on her back porch for every dog in the neighborhood. And she said around 9 p.m., we heard the shot. She said around 9 p.m., she saw a huge black-looking creature come walking down the side of her house going to get dog food. She opened the door and shot at it. It scared her half to death. It terrified this lady. She's still terrified of it. And she said it cleared a path over the hill breaking brush when she shot at it. Back in early February, I was picking up tree limbs in my cow pasture and found where something had been laying. The bed was 9 feet long and 4 foot across. I think it was an ambush position because it was on the edge of my yard. And I never thought to take a picture of it because I was just so overwhelmed by it. Jeremiah, you have to understand, there's a creek behind my house, and these deer, my farm is covered up with deer and turkeys. And these creatures obviously come out and they hunt these deer. And there's a fresh stream behind the house. There's all kinds of hardwood timber, cedar thickets. And I'll get to that later, though. Like I said, these creatures have watched me for a long time without me being aware of them. The creature moves from behind my house across the road and hangs out behind my neighbor's house. I told her to stop putting out dog food. Back in 2014 and 15, during deer season, I walked across the road at 4:30 a.m. to settle down in my hunting spot. I heard something walking about 30 yards from me, going away from me. And it was making quite a bit of a racket. And coyotes opened up at this thing that was walking. And I heard a coyote, someone hit it in the head, or just a death lick. It was a death blow. Everything went quiet, and I got out of there. These creatures don't, and it scared me. These creatures don't intend to hurt no one, I believe. But if you threaten them or interrupt their hunting, you will know about it. Every night now, they or it comes out behind my house. I pray they move on and leave me alone. I'm not afraid of them, but I want to be left alone. They are starting to tee me off a little. They're starting to get under my skin because it's every night thing. I understand they don't want to be seen, but they want people to acknowledge them. I never knew anything about a Bigfoot until I watched an episode, one of your episodes. I started putting the pieces of the puzzle together, and what I found out is quite disturbing. Now, apparently they love to deer hunt on my farm, which is covered up with deer, like I said, and turkeys. And like I said, a fresh creek runs behind my house, Jeremiah. There's cedar and hard timber back there. These creatures don't like to be disturbed during the night because they're trying to hunt. 3 nights ago, I was on my front porch watching YouTube at 9 p.m. I heard a large tree crack and break and fall into the ground. And it did this twice, not once, but twice back to back. And this happened night before last. It made a large noise, and the dogs went crazy. And around 2 a.m., that same night in the morning, at 2 a.m., my girlfriend got up to smoke. We only leave the bathroom light on so we can look out. We look out of our windows of a night, and you can see anything that's on our place out here in our yard. I got a 4-acre front yard. And she said as soon as she put her phone in the living room window, something slapped the end of the house really loud and hard. Our dog immediately jumped up and jumped on it, fighting it. It ran off. My neighbor got up. It woke her up, and she went outside to hear my dogs fighting. She said she'd never heard a dog fight like that. The next day, my dog went around all morning with her head straight up in the air trying to smell this creature. I noticed it right off. She was still trying to see if it was around here. She'd walk all the way around the house with her nose straight up in the air, sniffing. And these dogs, they barked a long time, for 3 months. But once they saw this thing, they don't want to have anything else to do with it. They used to carry on the fight. Now, my dog still does. But my neighbor's blue tick hound and a couple of other dogs, they go in the house. They won't carry on. They don't carry on, Jeremiah, like they used to. I have also saw apples with something's teeth marks in them that I've never saw before. I've got an orchard over here on my place I put out over 20 years ago. They would take a bite, throw it down, and get another one. The food is here, the cover is here, and water is here. I hope and pray that I don't have to move. I would most certainly hope nobody comes and makes them mad, because they would probably take out their anger on me. Bigfoot's pastime, I think. They love sneaking around houses at night and looking in windows, especially if you don't have a dog. These creatures watch me practically every day and know my routine. One night last December, I was sitting on my front porch watching videos, and the creature slapped on the back of the house while I was sitting on the front porch. The slap was so hard it knocked items off my kitchen table. I jumped up and ran around the back, and there was nothing there. So these creatures are very bold, and it's like playing jokes on people. It's like they think it's a game. That's my opinion. It wanted me inside the house so it could deer hunt. I think that's why, Jeremiah, I think that's why they don't like me out here at night on my phone, is because there's a lot of deer around here, and they deer hunt out here on my place. Large amounts of deer leave the forest at night to come out and graze in my 4-acre front yard late at night. I was apparently scaring the deer off. More things to tell you, too. I want no part of looking for these things, going into the woods, trying to see one. They want to be left alone, I think. They, too, are trying to survive and don't like people looking for them in the night. The night is when they hunt. Oh, yes. In late January, early February, I was standing on my front deck and counted 17 deer running for their life. They were coming from behind my house, and running across my 4-acre front yard. They were terrified, and you could see it in their faces. One looked like a 12-point. They were running and jumping high in the air, 2s and 3s at a time. These creatures are opportunistic. They will get food anytime they can find it. Also, there is not a lot of coyotes around my house, and I think I know why. Because they keep them thinned down. They eat coyotes, I do believe that. I have a lot of fruit trees, including pear, apple, plums, and mulberries. Last fall, I went back to get the upper part of my pear trees. I took a ladder with me, and I just gathered some the day before. And I went back the next day to get them. They were all gone, every single one. Not one pear was left in my orchard. And like I said, you'd have to take a ladder, Jeremiah, to get up there to get them, or stand in the back of a pickup truck. Also, half a mile from my house is an apple orchard. There's a big apple orchard half a mile in behind my house. And these creatures love fruit. I thought that squirrels did it, but further study now, after everything that's been going on throughout the winter and this late spring, it's nonstop. It's basically every night. They came out last night. And I've tried to write these things off so many times that I can't no more. And to be honest with you, I hope I never see one, because from what I've heard from other people on your show, it changes their life forever. They're never the same. It scares them. I'm not scared to go in the woods. I'm not afraid of the night. But from what I've heard other people, Jeremiah, say on your show, once you see one of these things, you never want to go back in the woods again. And I hope and pray that never happens. And it's funny. I said once that you have groups in which I think every man to each their own. I don't judge people. I don't talk about people. I'm a loner type guy, Jeremiah. I stay to myself. I don't get out and socialize. I did back in my younger days, but as I've gotten older, 60 now, 60 and a half, I just pretty much stay to myself. I'm semi-retired, and back when I used to drive 220 miles a day to work and back. I used to drive from where I lived in Murfreesboro and back, 220 miles round trip. And I never had time to get involved like I am now to actually figure out what was going on around here, because I never was home. I first lived down there, and then I just started driving back and forth after about 3 years. And like I said, I'm semi-retired now, and now I'm here, and I can put all these puzzles together. But for years and years, I just wrote them off as something else. I didn't know anything about Bigfoot, but it's got to the point now where they're getting bolder and bolder all the time. And I think they want me to know they're here. And I don't bother them, and so far, they've not bothered me, but they are here. My neighbor is very scared. She's been scared ever since this past winter, ever since she shot at one. She actually saw the outline and the black hair on it walk by her window. And she jumped up and got a gun real quick and opened the front door and shot out at it. And she said it made a loud noise going over the hill, breaking brush. I hope I never have to shoot at one. I mean, so far these creatures have left me alone, but it's a never night thing. It's a never. And what kills me is you got people going out and looking for them, and I'm trying to get rid of them. I hope they move on. I hope I never hear another one or never have another slap on the house. And like I said, they're into my fruit. They don't seem to be hurting nothing. But like I said, I found a bed. I was going to my mailbox back in the winter. It was in late February. And I saw a bed out there from my driveway. And I think this thing was laying there of a night, because large amounts of deer come into my yard every night. And these Bigfoots hunt them. And I believe with everything in me, Jeremiah, that this thing was laying there in ambush position where he could jump on the deer. And so me and my girlfriend come back in the house, and I got a measuring stick, a measuring tape, and it was 9 foot long by 4 foot across. And so I was so disturbed by it that I forgot to take a picture of it. a picture was never even entered my mind to take a picture of. And I still get out in the woods behind my house and stuff, and I've never seen where they've made any little lean-tos or little places to lay in. I've never seen anything like that my entire life. I've hunted in the woods, and I just lost interest in hunting. You know, I can afford to buy my food, and as long as I can afford to buy my food, I'm not going to kill a deer, but I've killed many deers and many turkeys over my life, and grouse and stuff like that, quail, rabbits. But it's a never night occurrence at my house.
Mark, I got a few questions for you, if you don't mind. As you can imagine, this is an incredible thing that you're going through. And to be honest, it doesn't sound that fun.
I wish it ain't. I wish it wasn't true. I wish I wasn't talking to you right now about it. But since these other people have come forward, but see, people in my very tight circle, which is a few family and a few close lifelong friends, I don't even mention it to them because I don't want them to think I'm cracking up.
And Mark, I was going to ask you, like, why come out in the open with this now if you've been not talking about it all these years?
Because I want other people to know that they're real. Mm-hmm. And other people have come forward. And another reason I think there's more now than there was back when I was growing up, Jeremiah, is, see, they restocked deer in the eastern United States in the 60s. They brought the turkeys in here in the 80s. And they've actually stocked elk. They've restocked the elk all through northeastern Kentucky. And eastern Tennessee also has a huge elk population now. And I think the reason that people are seeing more Bigfoot now is because of the food supply. There's more food now than there was back then, 40 years ago. There's deer everywhere. You can't hardly drive a car where I live without hitting. And like I said, I just come forward because I think other people need to know about it. I think other people need to know as much as they can about these creatures. That's why I came forward. Other people need to know that these things are out there. But now I don't think they mean nobody any harm unless you try to, harm them. Because so far they've just been playing games with me. And they know that I know they're here. And they tried for years to get me to realize that they were here, but I ignored them for over 20 years.
Exactly. Huh? How big is the land that you have there, Mark? How much land?
I've got 14.9 acres.
Wow.
Might as well say rounded off to 15 acres. And there's wilderness out here, Jeremiah. People don't hunt like they used to. That's another thing, too, I need to bring up. Back when I was growing up, everybody carried a gun in the back of their truck, visible to everybody to see. People had gun racks in the back of their vehicles, cars and trucks. A lot of people hunted back when I was growing up through the 60s, 70s, 80s. And then in the 90s, I noticed a trend that people quit hunting as much. As the new generation came on, they got into computers, and their family never taught them about guns and hunting, and they got into computers and they quit going into the outdoors. And with a great food supply, these animals have just exploded. Because there's people seeing these things all. And like I said, I pray I never see one. I don't want to see. And I'm most certainly not going to be out hunting for one. But I pray that the Lord grants me that wish that I never have to see one, because I don't want to be changed. I don't want to be terrified to go out in the woods anymore. But I know they're here. I know that. And my neighbor knows they're here. And she's quite scared. She's quite scared.
It sounds like your neighbor was intensely affected. And who can blame them? She had it in her sights and she took a shot at it. That's incredible.
Yes, she did. Yes, she did. And it's not retaliated, though, because she's the only neighbor in the neighborhood that I talk to. She lives alone. She's 67 years old. She's retired. And a lot of people have moved into Tennessee over the past years. This place, when I moved here, Jeremiah, 26 years ago, this place was it's still quite a bit wilderness. You can get lost out here where I live and not even try. You get off in the woods. But when I first moved here, this place was like Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom.
Yeah. Nice.
It was. You see deer 25 and 30 at a time. Herds of wild turkey with 50 and 100 in it. This place reminded me of Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom when I first moved here. I couldn't believe it. And I loved it here because I was always a deer hunter in my younger years and never did kill a lot of deer till I moved here. And, well, I came home when I bought this place. And I've been here ever since. And like I said, we don't associate with many people, and especially about something like this, because they'd look at you and they'd say, you're crazy. I don't want to talk to you anymore. So I feel comfortable about talking to other people who believe in the same thing. But to people, and people know I don't lie. I don't have a criminal record. I've never been in any trouble. I'm religious, very religious, and read my scriptures basically every day. But still, being a good citizen won't make you. I'll give you a good example. You remember when I told you that I heard wood knocking back in 2008 behind my house?
Mm-hmm.
And it went on for quite a while. It went on for 10 minutes, 10 or 15. There was a logger, a professional logger I knew. And I saw him up at the General Mercantile little store that's up here where I live. And I got him outside by himself, and I told him about it. And he made me a laughing stock. I didn't think he'd ever stop laughing. And I never opened my mouth again from 2008 to this night. Tonight I'm talking to you. I never opened my mouth again about a Bigfoot. Wow. I told him that's what I thought it was. And he laughed, and I think I might have lost a little respect by telling him that. If I had to do it again, I wouldn't have done it. But I've never opened my mouth again about Bigfoot.
I'm glad you're sharing tonight, Mark, for sure.
You know, it just baffles me, though, that people are out. I think people need to be careful what they wish for. You got people out there trying to get pictures and this, that, and the other of these things. These things want to be left alone. And some of these people might bite off more than they can chew. I've got them coming out here every night of the week, and I wished and prayed that they move on. And I don't want to see one, and I don't want to have anything to do with them. And you've got people out here looking for them. I would never be one of those people. I know they exist, and that's as far as I hope it goes. I hope, like I said, Jeremiah, I hope I never see one.
You're just trying to deal with it day in and day out. When it slaps your house, Mark, how high up on the side of the house do you get an idea when you hear it?
Jeremiah, it wasn't that high. It wasn't like 8 or 9 or 10 feet high. I would say it slapped the side of my house about maybe 5 foot. And the other night, I'm going to tell you something. It terrified my girlfriend so bad that she would not wake me up. We sat there and trembled. And when I heard my dog jump on it and was fighting it out here, I got up and come through the house. Now listen to this. I got up and come through the house, and she was sitting in the dark, shaking like a leaf. Now, this was last night.
Wow.
And why is a ghost? Why is a ghost? And, she's a big talker. And we've been together for a long time. She's a big talker. And she was sitting in the dark when I got up. We keep our bathroom light on of the night where we can see out. We don't turn our lights on at night because we like looking out across our farm here, a little farm, and we can see anything out here moving around like deer and stuff. And she was sitting in the dark with just the bathroom light on in the living room. And I walked in there and I go, I seen her shaking. I go, see, I didn't know what had happened. And I'll tell you something else too. When I heard those 2 trees crack last night, or night before, I think, last couple of nights, when I heard those 2 trees crack across the road, I was sitting out here on my front porch watching the videos. And I heard 2 trees crack back to back. Now, this is the first time I've ever heard this in my life. I heard 2 trees crack across the street back to back, like about a 4-inch diameter tree. I cut timber myself, so about a 4-inch diameter tree, Jeremiah, is like something took it and twisted it. You could hear the fresh green snapping and cracking and just a grinding noise, and a bam, a loud boom, and then one right behind the other. Two of them. Okay. Now, I didn't tell my girlfriend about that because I didn't want to scare her. Okay. I got up, went in the house, shut the door, locked the door, but I didn't mention it to her. So when I wake up, when I hear my dog out here jumping on something, I come through the house, and without her even knowing what happened to me just a few hours earlier, she was sitting there in the dark, shaking like a leaf and white as a ghost, trembling. When it slapped on the end of the house. That's how loud it was. And that's when she found out what I had experienced sitting on the front deck just a few hours earlier.
My goodness.
See, I didn't want to scare her. There's things that happen here. I don't want to scare her unless I have to tell her. And then that's when I told her when she already was scared about it, that's when I let loose and told her what had happened to me just 3-4 hours earlier. Because you don't want to scare somebody unless you have to. And you want to put fear. You don't want, you don't want to put fear in somebody unless you have no other choice. And that's when I told her what happened to me, and I don't think it scared her any worse because she was already terrified. And my neighbor lives in fear every night, if you want to know the truth about it.
Oh,
across
absolutely.
the street from me. She lives in fear every night.
Mark, have you seen any tracks around your property at all? Any weird tracks?
I've not been out really looking for them because I don't have to look for tracks because I know they're here.
That's true.
I'm not really, Jeremiah.
Yeah.
I don't look for the tracks because I know they're here. I don't have to prove to myself that it may or may not be these creatures because I know it's these creatures. So that's why I don't look for tracks or signs.
All right. Fair enough. You mentioned the one time you heard screams around 2 a.m. Can you describe what those screams sounded like at all?
I've never heard anything like it. It was a loud, and this is the only time I've ever heard any of these creatures. These creatures are pretty mild around here. We leave them alone, they leave us alone. They don't act up and carry on a lot unless you agitate them. And I can be out here on my phone, and if they want to deer hunt that particular night, they'll start cracking trees and stuff. The scream was like a loud pitch. It was extremely loud, and it rattled. The echo of it ran through my body, and I was 50 yards from it, inside of a house. So it was a scream that would most absolutely get you shaking immediately when you heard it. You would start shaking. Your mind would take over without you even thinking about it. And you'd break out into just a tremble. It was a loud, screaming pitch. And like I said, I've never heard anything like it. I can't really describe it. Just a screech. A loud, extremely loud screech. And that's the only time I've ever heard it. And like I said, it scared my neighbors so bad. When I heard it, I come in on the front porch because, see, I've got a 30 by 12 front deck that's screened in, but with a locked front door. And I can come out and look through my screen. And it's unprotected from anything coming up on the porch. And I didn't run out. I walked out on the front porch to see if I could hear it again. And I heard my neighbors. I couldn't see them, but I heard them jump in their car about 500 yards away. And they got in their vehicle and they come down in front of the road in front of my house. And they never come back. To my knowledge, they never come back that night. They went somewhere. But it scared them that bad. And this thing just screamed once.
And these are different. These are different neighbors than the one that took a shot at it, correct?
Yes, I've got some neighbors that moved in up here. They built a house right on my property line. I know you're supposed to leave like a 10-way easement.
That's another
that's another show. But yeah. And so they're about 500 yards to my southwest behind me. And you can tell when this thing, there's another thing I want to tell you too. My neighbor up the road, not the one across the street, the neighbor lived down the road a piece. They got a blue tick hound that hangs around here. And there's a big ravine behind my house that runs 10 miles. It runs all the way to the Cumberland River. And there's a ravine in front of my house that runs for 10 miles. So I'm talking straight up and down. You almost have to hold on to trees to pull yourself up. Deep, creepy looking. And this blue tick hound would always come down here at the house. It would go around my house for months. It did this basically on a daily basis. And every time the wind blew out of the northwest, this coonhound would go off into the woods, off down in one of the ravines, and it would bark like it had something treed. And I didn't want to. One day, I got my gun, and I told my girlfriend, I'm going down here and see what he's. I figured he had a coon treed up a tree. I got halfway down there. The coonhound came back out and followed me back home. But this thing does this, I could not tell you the times. Every time the wind would blow out of the northwest, this coonhound could smell this creature in one of these ravines. It would never bark if the wind was blowing out of the south or the west, only the northwest. So I know that's where these creatures are hanging out at. To the northwest of my house, down in the deep ravine. And I've shot deer down in there a few times, and it's an all-day job to get a deer out of there. It's an all-day job, 2 people. And there's a lot of wilderness here for these things. It's stacked on top of wilderness. It's wilderness on top of wilderness. Let me put it to you this way. I'm a little over 17 miles in any direction I go in to a store. In any direction, 17 miles. So that gives you an idea of how far I am.
Wow.
It takes me 45 minutes to drive to any kind of a store. Now, there's a little general mercantile store up here that was open for a long 50 years or so, and it's closed down, and I think it's open maybe once or twice a week now. And so that's the closest I am to the store, and I'm real close to Standing Stone Park. There was a guy that texted me that wanted me to get together with him, and I told him, I said, young man, I said, you don't really know what you're asking. You don't know what you're asking for. I told him, I said, you don't need to be out here in these bushes looking for these creatures. They don't want to be found. They don't want to be seen. So I told him, I give you my opinion, my advice. I said, you don't really understand what you're wanting to do. A person can bite off more than they chew. If they go after these creatures, you never know how they're going to act. Now, these creatures around my house so far have been pretty cool. They like playing games, eating the fruit. And I've got a fruit orchard over here, apple orchard, red delicious apples. They tear into them. And you know what? Another thing too, Jeremiah, is for years and years, my apples started disappearing. And I wrote it off as squirrels until I started seeing bite marks on them, and I didn't know what made it. It wasn't a deer. And so, like I said, after I retired, just this winter, just when I started to put the pieces of the puzzle together, I never had time to fool with these things before then. I was always working, always driving. And I was on the road 4.5 hours a day. And now that I'm home, the puzzle is coming together pretty quick, and I'm not having any problems putting it together as to what's actually going on around here.
Have you heard of any other maybe prior history of Bigfoot encounters in your area, or do you think it's just a current day thing?
Here at my house, it's a current day thing, and no, I haven't heard of anybody else talking about them. There's a boy over here close to Standing Stone Park. He said he lived 4 or 5 miles from the park, and he said he had 2 encounters. And I only live about 3 miles the way the crow flies to Standing Stone. But these creatures, I do believe, have been here a long time, Jeremiah, because things happened to me 20 years ago here, and I wrote it off as something else. I used to say, oh, that's an owl flew into the house, or that's a bird flew into the house at 2 o'clock in the morning. I always tried to write it off as something else until I got to where I couldn't anymore. These creatures here at my house, they've been here a long time.
Oh, yeah.
They were actually, I think they were here when I moved here back in 1996. Moved here in the summer of 96, and things started happening right off the bat. But like I said, we just wrote it off as something else.
Found it interesting how there were a lot of people that were commenting about issues around Standing Stone State Park and that being close to your area. you guys have got
yeah.
something going on there. There's no doubt.
I know we've got something going on. I'm just letting you know what's going on. There's no question in my mind. It wouldn't do if I had some night vision, a deer, these cameras people put on these trees. It wouldn't do if I had some of them. I'd show you what one of them looks like, but like I told you before, I don't want to know what they look like. I hope I never see one. I don't want it to scare me so bad that, or change my opinion so bad that I never want to go in the woods again. I don't want that to be taken from me. I don't want my freedom, Jeremiah, to be taken from me where I'm afraid to ever pick up a gun again.
Sure.
And that's why I don't want to see one. That's why I don't want to see one.
I was going to ask you, actually, have you considered putting a game camera on your property? And it sounds like you've already had that internal discussion.
No. So. I don't know how much they are, and I don't have a laptop computer to run the data off of the thing and put it on a computer. I've never owned a laptop, and I don't know how much these cameras are. I've never looked into it, but I just hope that I never have to face one of these things face to face, because from what I hear other people say on your show, it's a life-changing experience. And I pray to the Lord that I never have to see one.
Absolutely.
Because like I said, I don't want my freedom taken from me. I don't want the fear of ever wanting to go back in the woods again. I love the outdoors. And I would never want that taken away from me.
Your neighbor that had shot at one, Mark?
Yeah.
Do you remembering her account, do you know if she thought she actually hit the creature, or it was maybe a near miss? Or
I think from what she told me, she saw it walk by her window. And she just opened the door after it walked by her window and shot. She told me she shot up in the air to scare it off. And that's what she told me. Yeah, she didn't hit the creature. She shot up in the air to scare it away.
Gotcha.
And every time I have an experience, she has the same experience. It comes from my place to her place. It crosses the road out here. The day before yesterday, I got to noticing, I started looking real close at what had been going on. And I saw where something had crossed my fence out here. My fence is about 4.5 foot tall with barbed wire on top. And I saw where one of these creatures had crossed my fence in 3 different places, because it actually broke the plastic. What got my attention is it broke the plastic clips off of my fence post in all 3 locations. And my fence was wadded together. It had put its hand down on the fence, and it pushed down in all 3 places in the center where it left an indentation in and I've got some of the best wire you can buy. I forgot the name of it, but it's the good stuff. No, it's tough. It's tough wire. And then I got 2 strands of barbed wire, Jeremiah, on top of that. And like I said, it broke the plastic clips off of each fence post where it crossed. So it crosses I got a big 900 square foot barn out here too. And I've never looked really for evidence inside the barn, but like I said, me and my girlfriend starting to pay more attention, and we're just hoping tonight we don't have another experience like last night. Was a scary time for us. It really was. When you walk through the middle of the house in the dark, but with the bathroom light on, you see your girlfriend sitting there in the dark, shaking and trembling like a leaf and white as a ghost. You know what? I want them to go away. I just want my peace back. I just want my peace of mind back. I don't want to have to sit in my house hearing things outside, the slaps and stuff on my house, which has happened many times. I don't want to have to deal with that no more. I just pray that the Lord moves them on. I hope they go somewhere else.
I hear you.
But I don't fear the creatures because we've never bothered them. And something else too. I mentioned this, but I want to bring it up again right quick. I've heard other people on your show say that sometimes these animals will leave you a gift. I found the back leg of a cow. The bone was just fresh. It was shiny, white, laying right on the edge of my yard. I mowed my yard a couple of weeks ago, and there lay a back leg of a cow bone that was fresh. But the problem is, here's the problem. There's no cows within 5 miles of me.
Okay.
I don't think I brought that up before. That's another thing. There's no cows within 5 miles of me, Jeremy. That's another thing I just brought off the top of my head. Which that's another occurrence. There you go. And to be honest with you, in all truth, the only guy that I know that has cows from here, 3 days ago or 4 days ago, me and my girlfriend was going to the grocery store, and I stopped by and I talked to him. He's a real nice fellow. He's a Jewish fellow from New Hampshire or somewhere up in there. And I asked him, I hadn't talked to him in a while, but we know each other. And I asked him, I said, have you had any cows go amiss lately? And he said, no, Mark, I'm not. Yeah, I know everybody down here. Jeremiah, I've lived here 26 years. I'm one of the oldest people that's been here. There's only one or two other people that's lived here longer than me. And I asked him, his name's Abner. I said, Abner, have you had any cows go miss lately? He said, no, Mark. He says, I've got fresh beef for sale, but I've not had any cows go amiss. And I said, you know anybody else that's got any cows around here? He goes, yeah, I know of one man. But I said, he's not missing any cows either, or I know about it, he said. So my question is, where did this fresh cow bone come from I found in the edge of my yard?
Yeah.
Now that's a puzzle right there. Now that's a puzzle I can't put together. That's something I ain't been able to figure out yet. Mm-hmm.
That is wild, Mark.
Well, it's true. It's true.
Exactly.
I mean, it is what it is.
You had mentioned something about cedar thickets. I want to make sure that's something we cover because you said you were going to go back to it. Yeah.
Yes, there's heavy cedar thickets here at my house. And like I said, a fresh creek behind the house. You can drink water out of it. It's that fresh. I've got a water well here on my place, but I've never used it. It's about 40 feet deep. But there's all kinds of cover and food here for any kind of creatures. And back in mid-February, I was out here on my front porch doing something, and all of a sudden I started catching glances of deer running through my front yard, coming from this heavy cedar thicket behind my house where the creek is. And I've never in my life seen deer run and jump like this. These things were running 2s and 3s at a time. I counted 17 deers, and one of them was about a 12, a monster, huge rack 12-point. These things were coming through my yard 2s and 3s at a time, one right behind the other, running for their lives. I've never saw a deer with that kind of fear in their faces. They ran right through my front yard. I was within 30 yards of them. They didn't pay me a bit of attention. They seen me stand there, and they just kept coming the direction 30 yards of me. And I actually saw fear in these animals' faces. And I hollered at my girlfriend. I said, come out here a minute, look at this. And she says, what's them deer running from? And I said, I don't know, but I can tell you what I think they're running from. There ain't many things in the woods that would make 17 deer clear out of an area that quick, unless it was something wanting to kill them. Jeremiah, we're walking on eggshells around here.
Oh, I'm sure. I mean, it's got to be terrible.
We're walking on eggshells. It is. People don't understand. People don't have a clue. These people wouldn't be out there hunting for them if they had to go through what I go through every night. And we're walking on eggshells, just praying and still reading our scriptures and just praying these things leave us alone. But what do I think they are?
Yeah.
I think pretty much plain and simple, cut and dry. I think they're an unknown ape species with some form of maybe human characteristics. But I think the government knows all about them. But see, you have to understand, anything the government can't last and put a microscope under and dissect it and put it back together, they're not going to claim it exists. Anything the government can't control or put a lasso around its neck, they're going to deny it exists because they can't control it. The government knows what they are. Yeah, they know exactly what they are, and they know their DNA, and they know everything about them. But they don't want to cause a panic in the public. If you was to come out on broad open radio stations and say this stuff, it would create a panic that they don't want. Sure. And neither does the public. I can't really blame them. I can't blame them. I would keep it quiet too. It's on a need to know basis. But I think it's a species that came here thousands of years ago, because these things go back to as far as man's been here. Even Indians just talked about them. I've seen on your show. I've heard mention of Indians talk about them and stuff. I think it's an unknown species to basically your everyday person, but the government knows about them. But it's an unknown, maybe a gorilla species that could have possibly cross-linked with a female woman at one time or another, possibly. I don't really know. I'm not a scientist. That's just my speculation. I think that one of them could have crossed over to the human part, and they may, because some people I've seen on your show say they look human in the face.
Oh, many people say that. Yeah.
Tell me what you think about them.
Mark, my personal thought about it is that it's an undiscovered great ape species in North America. But if you look at groups that are looking into it for extended periods of times, like the NAWAC, the North American Wood Ape Conservancy out of Oklahoma, it's got to be a unknown ape creature. And there's a lot of different listeners to the show that have many different thoughts. There's no right or wrong answers, but personally, that's what I think is what we're dealing with. So it just adds up. I agree with Jeremiah 100%. I agree with you 100%. That's what I think they are. I will say this. These creatures they get a kick out of sneaking around people's houses at night, especially those that don't have a dog, to let them know that there's something out there. They get a kick out of looking in windows and studying people. That's absolutely right.
Yes, they've done it here for years without me even knowing about it. We just got a dog 3 years ago. First dog I've had since I've lived here. And that's what I think about these creatures. Let me say it to you this way. Jeremiah, more about these creatures than I ever will, because you've talked to hundreds of people. And I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you on the phone. I'd love to shake your hand, but you're pretty much an expert in this field. I consider you to be. And you talk to people all over the country, Canada, and you know a lot about these creatures. But my point is, Jeremiah, they get a kick out of us as much as we do them. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. It makes total sense. Yep. It's genius. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And thank you for the kind words. Mark, do you mind talking directly to the listener for a few minutes about why it's important that they share their story for the first time?
I think it's very important for people to share their information, because it can give other people in the study of these creatures more information that they need to finally figure out these creatures. The more information that you put out there, the more information researchers can use to their advantage.
Mark, it's been amazing talking to you. Your story is incredible. It's actually happening to you right now. Could be tonight.
Yes. Absolutely. And I hope it don't.
Right.
That's my prayer and my wish, is I hope it don't happen tonight. It's a burden. You know what I mean? It's a burden. And I want to ask you this. Have you ever saw one?
You know what, Mark? I haven't. I hope to one day. I do actually have the hope to have a sighting one day. I know that it will greatly affect me as a interviewer and a researcher, but I do hope to have a sighting one day. But we will see.
I hope the same for you.
Yeah.
I hope the same for you too, Jeremiah. I just hope you the best. And I know your channel is growing, and I hope you the best at whatever you wish to do. You're a good man. I can tell that by your voice. You're an outstanding individual.
Thank you, sir. I'm sure this won't be the last time I'll hear from you. Please keep in touch for the future and let me know what happens to you and your property. I hope you guys are safe. But thanks again for chatting.
I appreciate that very much, sir. So you want me to continue to stay in touch with you if this stuff continues on?
Absolutely.
I will. I hope it don't. I hope you don't hear from me again.
Right.
But,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But if you do,
don't. I hope I never have to talk to you about it. Yeah, but if I do, I want to tell you this. So everything I've told you tonight, I have no reason to lie about anything. I'm not that kind of person. I've never stole. I just don't tell. I was once a great athlete and a soldier and stuff, and I don't have to have an ego. I've already had one from the past, and I'm fine with who I am today. So I've already lived my athleticism and shooting them old tank shells, and I've already did pretty much everything I want to do. So I don't. Most certainly don't do this for recognition.
Yeah,
the opposite.
It'd be nice to have some peace and quiet. So we'll hope for that.
So all right. I hope. All right. I hope you learned something from my interview tonight, Jeremiah. I hope you learned something from it.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for chatting, Mark.
All right.
Become a supporting member of the Bigfoot Society podcast by going to www.patreon.com/the Bigfoot Society and receive extra episodes and early ad-free episodes as well. If you've got a personal Bigfoot encounter you would like to submit for me to share on the podcast, please head on over to www.bigfootsocietypodcast.com. There you'll find the Share Your Bigfoot Encounter form a little lower on the page, and please take a minute to share as many details as you can. Please state if the encounter is anonymous or what name you would like associated with the encounter. And as always, thanks for listening.